So I'm just going to jump in and start, like I said, I planned to stand because that felt more whatever, but this is what I'm going to do because now it feels like this. So I just want to share a little bit about my vision and my heart about this ministry, and since the beginning last year, and I warn you, but it's because God has been working in my heart for a year, and so if you don't know this, I'll give just like background. My husband and I were a part of Master's Commission Discipleship School in Florida for a long time, and then we served there on staff members, so we worked with young adults. Then we transitioned to Big Lake in 2017, and we were youth pastors for almost 6 years, working with youth, and now we did this last year. I did this church, to where now I'm working with kids. So I started at the top and worked all the way down. So that said, last year, when we started the church, it started to become evident that I wasn't just supposed to like coordinate volunteers, but that I was supposed to, by like a few months in, we needed somebody to step into the role that I'm doing now, which is like kidsman administrator, overseer. I don't know. I keep asking time, like, what do I call myself when people ask me? Like, kidsman coordinator? I'm like, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, so it kind of just became evident that somebody needed to step into that role to kind of not only oversee and coordinate it, but also take the lead on vision for the kids ministry and, just the leadership role. Anyway, so it just naturally was like, okay, I'll just do that. Initially, I'm just going to be very vulnerable. Initially, I was doing it because somebody had to do it. And I was like, I've never served in this capacity in kids ministry before. I've done kids, helped in nursery, all that kind of stuff ever since I was a kid. But to this capacity was my first time, and I was just like, I'll just do it until somebody else comes along, I guess. And for a few months, last spring and summer, that's what it was for me. And way back when I was a young adult, God called me very specifically, I remember the place and time, to call me into the ministry to speak to young women. And I felt like that was a very strong thing. And at the time I was leading the discipleship program for the women in Florida, and it all was just, it fit, it made sense. And I was like, yes, I love this, I'm excited, whatever. As time has gone on, like I've had opportunities to speak and do different things like that, but it has never seemed to like completely unfold like I thought it was going to this point. So last year, when God started putting on my heart to do this and to lead the kids, I was like, okay, I'll do that for a while, whatever. And it started to become just this is just what I'm going to do until I get to the next thing. Until I get to do what God's called me to do, which is speak to adults, speak to young women. The Lord really started to convict my heart. And like I said, I'm just going to be very vulnerable today. Because you're all my friends, and this is real life, but we're all part of a team as well, and I want you to know where my heart is with this. So I wrestled with God for a while because I was like, God, this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing, like doing. We all know what I mean. Like, I'm doing this now, but this isn't like what I'm supposed to do, right? And God consistently reminded me and humbled me by asking the question, why do you think this isn't as valuable? Why do you think that this is not as important as speaking to adults? And consistently brought me back to scriptures time and again where Jesus valued children even above adults coming to him. And my heart was struggling because my flesh had already had this idea of what I was supposed to be doing, and this was not it. And I was like, God, but I'll do this for right now. I'll be faithful for right now because this is what I feel like our church needs somebody to do this, so I'll do it. But I don't feel like this is actually what you want me, or what I'm supposed to be doing, or what I thought I would be doing. I had this perception of what I was supposed to be doing, and this was not it. Well, through the summer, and some conversations with people, and just a lot of prayer, I was like, God, you got to change my heart, because I can't do this by myself. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't feel like I'm good at this. I don't feel like I'm like just naturally like a kids pastor type of role. But I want to be faithful. I want to be faithful. And in November, beginning of November, I had the chance to go to the Assemblies of God, the Minnesota Kids Ministry Leaders Retreat, which I have now been to the Youth Pastors Retreat, the Church Planners Retreat, and now the Kids Leaders Retreat. And it ended up in the last minute I had to go by myself. Tyler couldn't come with me, which actually was okay because I spent most of the weekend crying and praying and on my face before God, where I was repenting and asking God to forgive me and to just give me a heart for what he has for me and to give me a heart for these kids, and repenting and laying down my own desires and what I thought I was supposed to be doing, which was hard for me because I was clinging, like white knuckling to this like dream and this call that I thought he had in my life, or that I thought, I was supposed to be doing at the time. And so I remember laying there and just saying, okay, God, I was bawling and at the end of a session, and I just said, okay, God, I'm just literally, as I'm laying here on the ground and laying all of this before you, I'm laying down all of my expectations of what I'm supposed to do or what I think I'm supposed to do, and I just want what you want. And so that weekend, God really spoke to me about the kids of this church and where I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to be doing as a leader, and what this can look like, and how important, how valuable what we are doing is. From the little babies all the way up to the 6th graders or 5th graders or whoever, how valuable this is. It's not just a role that we're filling. It's not just a spot. We get to love on these children, and we get to train them up. Every Sunday, we get a chance to speak into their lives. And my heart just started to overflow with joy and excitement and honestly a lot of humility, especially because of the attitude I had previously. But I just realized, like, God, you have chosen us. You've asked us to do this because of the value, because of this, the importance of children coming to Jesus. And in Matthew 19:14, the disciples are all arguing and whatever around Jesus. And Jesus has a child. He brings him and he says, let the little children come to me and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these. He needed an example. And he used a child, an example. The kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these. How arrogant of me to think that speaking and preaching to children is less valuable than adults. And honestly, I shared this story with the 3 other ladies before this started today, but when yesterday, a couple months ago, Tyler had asked me if I wanted to preach on a Sunday. And I said, yeah, it's been a while, I would love to, and I had something stirred in my heart and everything. And as the time went on, I just was like, okay, like just try to do that, and juggling teaching on Sundays and kids and like all these things and things that I was excited about to start with the kids, and I just felt like I didn't have time. And I guess last night I shared something with Tyler, and I'll share it with you. I had a very embarrassing and humbling conversation with the Lord a couple days ago. I was thinking about preaching in March, and God just asked me, are you so intent on preaching to the adults because I want you to, or because you want people to know that you can speak? And I embarrassingly had to admit to myself and to God that it wasn't about him this time. I felt like I wanted people to know that I could speak. And I repented, and I told Tyler yesterday, I said, I can't right now. It's not the right time for me to speak, and I want to be focused on what God has called me to do right now, and that is with the kids. And so I said, for a while, I won't be speaking in church. I'm preaching for a while. And I'm still fleshing out what God has for me, but I can tell you this. Tyler said something last night to me that really stuck with me. And he said, put down roots as a kid's leader. Sephra, thank you. He said, why do you feel like you're not speaking or you're not preaching when you're preaching to the kids? That's exactly what you're doing. You're preaching. And he said, put down roots in the kids' ministry. And for us, for Tyler and I, that's been every season where God's moved us on, whether it's in Florida, whether it's as youth pastors or this. People have asked us, like, well, what do you want to do, like, in the future? And we always said, like, we're not thinking about that. God has us in youth ministry. This is where we're dropping roots. Like, we're youth pastors until God tells us otherwise. And I realized I wasn't doing that with this role. And so last night, Tyler just said, drop the roots in kids ministry. be in kids ministry, be a leader in kids ministry until God tells you otherwise. And so I know that's a super emotional and heavy start to this, but I need you to know where my heart is right now. And in a very vulnerable place. I've been in ministry for a very long time, but I've never done this. And so this is new for me. And I don't know what God has for my future. And at this point, I'm choosing not to care. Because right now, this is where He has me. And I want to drop roots, and I want to grow, and I want to flourish, and I want to serve. So just know that as your leader, I'm doing this humbly. I'm learning right alongside of you. But God has, I feel like you need bread. Like, I feel like He has kneaded my heart this last year so much. And about this. And so I'm at a place where I'm very, very vulnerable and emotionally on the edge all the time about this role. But I'm also very excited. And God's dropped dreams in my heart. I'm not a natural, creative. That's not my natural. I have to work a lot harder to come up with ideas and stuff, and that's one of the reasons I discredited myself, because I always feel like, kids, you gotta be creative, you gotta come up with some fun things, and we have a great curriculum that gives us a lot of ideas, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but I was qualifying myself for a lot of different reasons, and that was one of them, and God has been giving, sparking in my heart different things that, we can do, and I learned stuff at the retreat, and I'm getting ideas, and I'm networking with kids pastors whom I've never met before, and I'm like, help me, please. And God has opened the door for me to get licensed as an aging minister in April. And so I'll have my pastoral license, which I thought, again, was going to be, I was like, I'm getting this. One of the biggest reasons is to speak to young women and do that in the future, which maybe. But I'm like, Tyler again was like, we need kids pastors, Sephora. We need this role. And you're discrediting yourself from this and thinking this is not what you're supposed to be doing, or this isn't it for you, or whatever. And so anyway, I don't know what God's doing. All I know is I'm at the place finally where I'm just willing to drop roots here, and I'm just this is what I'm doing, and I'm excited about it. And I'm so grateful for all of you, because otherwise I'd be doing it by myself. And that's overwhelming.
It's hard,
So thank you all for your role.
Zephyr, before you go any further, can I just say what you just did is a huge ministry to us. That, for a leader to be raw and authentic and share what God's doing and how we all battle. Mm-hmm. And so thank you, because I could relate to much of what you said. And if I don't now, I would down the road sometime. So right there, you're pastoring us. Okay, so don't forget that. Thank you.
Thanks.
That's how we teach. That's how we bring God into the lives of other people, is by sharing our testimony and what His story is in us. So,
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Thank you. So a few things that have been, I've learned and have spoken to me, and that God's been speaking to me, and I've learned it from other people that I was just talking about, but a lot of times I've had to ask myself, do I realize the power that there is in bringing kids to Jesus? Here's the thing. In a minute, I'm going to have each of them share a few things about why they're doing kids ministry, what they want to see happen in the future, and what's a win that they've had doing this in the last year, the 3 elementary teachers. And I can tell you that our kids ministry isn't huge. You all know that, So there's weeks where up in the nursery, it's just my girls. There's weeks where downstairs, there's just 4 or 5 kids. But here's the deal. That's how our church started. It started small, and it has grown, and our kids ministry will grow. But what I have realized is the power of these kids' relationships with Jesus in those moments. The things that Atlas will tell me after Sundays, the things he takes away, the things I've asked other kids about, the things that Rowan and Finley will say, the things that I'm like, what are you learning? Or what was this about? Or they come out of kids' church talking about watching my daughters in the nursery worshiping Jesus and repeating the little declaration thing that they do. The other week I was in the nursery and I almost started crying. And they do that at home, but to see that they're getting the same thing at church was so powerful to me. The power of these children, it'll get you if you let it, if you open your heart to let it. And he said that the kingdom of heaven belongs to children, belongs to such as these, all of us, to humble ourselves as children. He talks about it several, and he says in another passage, to have faith like a child, have faith in They have the, excuse me, kingdom of heaven belonging to such as these. Have simple faith. In Matthew 21:15 and 16, it says, when the chief priests and the scribes saw the wonderful things that Jesus did, and the children crying out in the temple, Hosanna to the Son of David, they were indignant, and they said to him, do you hear what these kids are saying, basically, these people are saying? And Jesus said to them, yes, have you never read, and this is from Psalms, Jesus quoting from Psalms, he says, out of mouths of infants and nursing babies, you have prepared praise. And for me, I was reading that the other day, and I was like, Jesus, like, it wasn't even just, like, in the Old Testament, it was talking about the ability and the power of praise and worship from children. Yeah. Like, I watch my girls worship Jesus, and they don't have a care in the world. When we're in our house and they're worshiping, or we started doing ASL worship videos on the screen, when they're doing the goodness of God, and they do this every week, I'm like, God, make me like my girls. Make me like my girls. To just have a simple faith. Just whenever the other day I had a stomach ache or my back was hurting or something, and Phoebe just stopped what she was doing and she's like, Jesus, I just pray for my mom and her back. And she started praying. The other day when she heard that Jackie's mom was in the hospital, she stopped what she was doing and we prayed, and she prayed for her mom. I didn't understand half of the prayer, but I caught that she was praying for Jackie's mom to feel better when she was in the hospital. To me, I'm like, this is what it's about. Yeah. Instilling the love of Jesus in children and watching it play out and teaching them to have a relationship with Jesus. It's powerful. If you don't have kids or little kids, I'll tell you what, if you open your hearts on Sundays to let yourselves be touched by these kids, they will bless you. Yes. They will bless you. And they will challenge you. And you'll be like, okay, maybe I don't have the most simple faith and I need to, because this kid was just like, well, let's just pray about it. And I'm like, well, duh, yeah, let's just pray about it. Why am I like overthinking this? There's so much power there. So what does this mean for us? We need to see our roles, like I said earlier, as more than just a spot. And if you're in that position right now and you're like, I'm just volunteering, I just jump in when I need it. Thank you, first of all, because that is also like very helpful. But at the same time, I don't want you to just fill a spot. I want you to want to do this, and I want you to be changed by this. I want your heart to be challenged. I want you to be humbled. I want you to feel loved. I want you to feel valued. I want you to feel that what you're doing is so important, because it is. While the adults are having their service and being fed, you've all been in an adult service, you know when you walk out of a good sermon and you're like, man, that was good, like that changed me, that like whatever. We get to have that impact on the kids. You know, we get to be those, even if it's a little tiny baby who doesn't understand teaching, loving on them, doing that's why we've implemented what we have upstairs, which I'll talk about it again in a minute. We've done these things intentionally. We're not just like, I don't know, what else can we do? Just throw things at the wall and see what sticks. Like, God is starting to move it in my heart. We are preachers to these little kids. Yes. And we need to do it, and we need to do it well, because we will also be blessed. We need to see our roles not just as a spot, but as a mission to lead these kids and to teach them how to have a relationship with Him. I'm going to pause right there, and I'm going to have the ladies share really quick. Either Matera or Elizabeth, if you want to go first. And just share really quick, couple minutes, 3 things. The first thing being, why are you doing this? Why do you serve in this way? The second thing, what's a win that you have seen in the last year? And the last one is, what do you want to see happen in the kids' ministry? So, Mateo, you start.
I can go first. I first joined because the role needed to be filled, and I was kind of like, I have no idea what I'm doing or how. And now it's kind of turned into something that I love to do because I get to be with my kids. And at this age they're at right now, there's a lot of times where I just don't know how to implement Jesus into their hearts. And whenever I'm preparing for the Sundays that I do teach, I try to involve them, and it actually kind of teaches me just like the day-to-day, okay, like it's actually so simple. It really is simple, but I complicate it a lot. And so now I just kind of look at it as like I'm learning just the basics and how much in detail, and how much you don't really have to go into detail with kids, and they still just grasp it. And also with them being a part of the planning process has been really fun. It's really fun just kind of watching them like in class be like, oh, so they're gonna do this. And my kids, like, I don't know if you guys know my kids well, but they're awesome. They are awesome, but in kids class they don't really like to participate. They're kind of like they don't like to stand during worship.
I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not going to pretend. So teach me, please. simple faith, like Jackie was saying, childlike laughter and silliness. Like, my goodness, it's okay to be silly. It's okay to get on the ground and play with those kids. To how to worship, even if nobody else is engaging in it. There was a story Alice told, I think it was Elizabeth's week that she was teaching. I don't remember. I'm going to put a pin in that story to share when she comes back up. But to the things that I've learned in this role have been powerful and have been humbling, have been so valuable, and I've implemented in my own home, like Mateo was sharing as well. So if that's not you, if you're not in that place where you're like, what we've been sharing, what we've been learning, all these things, if for you it's a role to fill, like I said, thank you for filling that role. But now I'm calling all of us to take a step past that. And the only way that happens is through prayer. That's it. I'll tell you that right now. Because we cannot pull ourselves by our bootstraps enough and be like, just get a better attitude, Sephora. It's just going to get worse. I'll tell you that right now. Because we are naturally, we're humans, we're selfish. That's just who we are, like naturally. Without the redemptive power of the Holy Spirit in our lives, we are selfish people who want what we want and don't want what we don't want. And prayer is the way to allow the Holy Spirit to change your heart. Romans says, allow your heart and your mind to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And that is what I'm asking all of us as leaders, to allow the Holy Spirit to transform our hearts and our minds into, God, I want this to be joyful. Have the honest, embarrassing conversation with Jesus. I had it, and I've had it several times in the last year where I'm like, oh, this is gross that I have to admit this. And literally no one else hears this. Well, now I've told lots of people. But like in that moment, I was like, nobody else is going to hear me admit this, but I can't admit this. If you've ever had a moment like that with yourself or with God, you're like, my motives are disgusting right now. Like, I need to have that conversation. Have that. Like, be honest with God. He already knows it anyway. God, I don't really want to do this, 1, 2, 3, whatever times a month. But I want that attitude to change. Help me, help me, help me. He is faithful. The Holy Spirit will do that if we invite him to do that. Pray for your own heart. Pray for these kids. Once you start praying for kids, your mind will start to naturally shift. Your mindset will shift because your perspective will be taken off of yourself and put on somebody else. That's how God works when we start praying for people. I was going to share a story when you're downstairs. One of the things that I have learned was to worship even if nobody else is engaging or nobody else is there. And when we first started this church full of, in Tyler's words, Norwegian Minnesotans that are just like, I was like, which that's all new for me. I'm like, I'm not from the South, but I'm like, we can move a little bit, right? Like, man, Minnesotans are like, thank you, Jesus. I'm like, okay, all right. It's the Catholic background. That is what I'm learning, and that's okay. When we first started the church, I was like, I want to worship with my hands up. I'm going to sway. I'm going to move. I'm going to clap. And that's just, even if I'm the only one. I know Tyler will do it with me. And way back when, Michelle Schultz, when she was with us, I know she will clap too. But in kids' church, this is starting to happen. And we have had to help these kids learn how to engage in a worship service, how to, just express yourself, however that looks like to Jesus. And one week, I think Elizabeth was teaching, afterwards, almost every Sunday I ask Alice, hey, how was kids' church? It was good. Okay, so what'd you learn? These kind of things. And he said, she told me first, and then I heard it from his version. And he said, first, during worship, I was like, Elizabeth was trying to get everybody to stand up and, clap and be a part of worship. And so I was doing it, and I was, whatever. And he said, and then nobody else was doing it, so I kind of just sat down. And I was like, and I was like, well, did you feel embarrassed, whatever? And he's like, well, Elizabeth was doing it too, and she encouraged me to do it or whatever. And he's like, so I don't know. I was like, well, I'm just gonna do it, I guess. And for me, I was like, okay, my son tends to be on the shy side most of the time, until you get to know him. But I also know that he loves to worship and he loves to sing. He's also a type A rule follower, so he's like, she said to do this, do it. But but I also was talking him through that, and I was like, buddy, I'm like, I know that's hard. I'm like, sometimes that's hard for me. If I'm the teacher in there and I'm the only one that's engaging in worship, that can feel embarrassing. But then I got to teach him through that and tell him this is a moment for you and Jesus. It's okay if whatever. I said, even if you're the only kid, you can always count on the teacher to engage with you. And he's like, yeah, that's true. So it was a cool moment that I was like, oh man, I got to hear from Elizabeth's perspective and then his perspective, which was pretty cool. But anyway, so if that's you, if you're struggling with this, just take it to Jesus. Seriously, like I said, I've had in my lifetime, especially this last year and way back when too, like some intensely honest and embarrassing quote unquote moments where I've had to just admit stuff that I didn't want to admit with me and Jesus. And then usually the Holy Spirit gives me opportunity to share with other people. I'm like, well, if I'm embarrassed, now everybody knows. Whatever. It's okay. He always uses it for his glory.
And he can take it.
Absolutely, he can handle it. So it's just important for us to be in prayer about this because he will change our perspective. And coming every week to serve with a smile on our faces and God-given joy in our hearts. Now that doesn't mean you come in if you had a rough morning that you're like fake and you're like, yay, can't wait to be here, yay, you know. But at the same time, if you're having a rough morning, take that to Jesus. Lord, help me to put this stuff, give this stuff to you, not pretend it didn't happen. Like maybe if it's appropriate to be honest with the kids, like I had a kind of a cruddy morning, but guess what? Jesus knew that and he brought me here and you know. So a couple things I just want to touch on really quick before I jump into the curriculum stuff, which is not going to be a long time. A couple things that are ahead, which I'm super excited about that the Lord is starting to, we've already started some of this, but we just kind of talked about it, is our worship culture, specifically with the elementary kids. I am really wanting to help them. What I have noticed and what we have all noticed is there's not a ton of engagement. If you're never in that room, you wouldn't know this, but there's not a ton of engagements. Either the kids want to just sit or they don't. We have kind of a complex thing in the elementary room. We have the kids who have been going to church their whole lives, Macy, Atlas, Finley, Rowan, you know, all these kids who are, they go in week in, week out, they're always here, you know, and then we have the kids who have never been there, or they're like just kind of new, and they come, and they're like, both sides of the spectrum, we have seen kids who don't necessarily know how or don't really want to be a part of the worship service time. And that could be out of boredom, that could be out of embarrassment, that could be out of, what the heck is going on? I don't know what to do here. Whatever that is, and I want to try to like prayerfully remedy that. There's so much power in singing praise to God, specifically that part of a service, that I want that to be fruitful and beneficial for the kids as well as for adults. So we're going to start to, there's things brewing in my heart that we're going to start to shift and teach why we worship. What are, like, how do people worship? Like, all those types of things. And kind of teach through that. And one week that I really saw actually a huge shift in that was when I let them go kind of all over the room and worship however they wanted to. That week was also very odd because it was the wise men. We were talking about the wise men, and I had the lights off, and we had lamps in there everywhere. If you were there that week, you probably saw we had the whole room, all the lights off, except we had a bunch of lamps everywhere, and they were searching for a star or whatever. We had kids sitting on big blankets instead of chairs. Just, it was very different. But I will tell you, Atlas's idea, or what you were saying, involving the kids being a part of the lesson to build a lesson. Duh. I learned that at kids retreat. I'm like, why do I feel like I'm like, shh, don't tell Atlas this, because I wanted it to be special and a surprise. But I learned for him it's a different type of special if he gets to help prepare it. Like you were saying, he's in there like, oh my gosh, you'll never believe what we're going to do today. I know, isn't it crazy? My mom
takes
all the lights
ownership
off.
too.
Yes, ownership, and there's more value there. And so it was actually partially his idea to have them like go wherever they wanted to and worship however they wanted. And I saw kids like Finley and Rowan and Macy and a couple other kids that don't always engage in that. They were engaging in their own way. Like they weren't goofing off. They were, turning around, raising their hands, clapping, like whatever, because they were in their own little space over here. They weren't in a group, and it was different and all that. Sometimes you just have to switch it up with kids. Like just be like, I don't know, this week we're gonna face this wall instead of that wall. Like whatever. Doesn't matter. So that's one of the things we're going to start to shift is the way that we do the singing part, praise and worship part of the service. Small groups we're starting to see that there's some kids who are old enough to have some feedback in service and learning. What are you learning? Let's talk about it. Ask me some questions. And then we have kids who are a little bit young for that, but they can still give answers, even if they can't like write stuff out or they can't whatever. So I'm going to try to figure out how we can work with this and do a little bit more. One of the ways I learned this at retreat, I stole this from another kid's pastor, which she gave me permission. I designed my own, but so we're going to start in a couple weeks to have these little clipboards available every Sunday for the elementary kids. When they come in, they can grab one of these and a pen, and during service, this will help the doodlers to doodle if they want to during service, but it will also help them to write things out if they're old enough to write, or they can draw a picture about what they're learning throughout the class. So it says today's Bible story, today's wonder truth, which I'll get to that in a minute, and what did you learn? And some weeks we're going to have small group at the end where we can talk about that. Other weeks they can just take that home and talk about it, whatever they want. But what we have noticed is what this kids pastor was teaching us is, this gives, like I said, the kids who like to doodle and draw. Macy, she loves to draw and write during service, which doesn't bother me. She's not being disruptive. But I also want her engaged while she's drawing and writing, you know? So it gives them something to do, but it helps them stay engaged. It also gives them tangible, something to take home every week. And so again, if they're not old enough to write, you know, we'll talk this through when I introduce it. They can draw pictures or they can just whatever. If they don't want to do it, they don't have to. But this is a way to keep kids engaged, help them to think through what they're learning and not just be like, I think Jesus was in our Bible story today. Like, yes, you're right. But like,
Good guess.
Yeah, exactly. So we are going to start doing these in a couple weeks to help with that, and we'll play around with that, see how that goes, and that'll be in the elementary room. And then, as most of you guys know, the beginning of January we started BGMC. If you're not familiar with this, it stands for Boys and Girls Missionary Challenge, and this is a little money barrel, and it's the Assemblies of God, like across the nation, the world. It's like all over. Their way to get kids involved in giving missions money to kids. A lot of what they do, a lot of their initiatives go directly to help kids. Like to get kids, they did a project where they raised money for shoes for kids in Africa. They did dug wells. They've done partnered with different organizations for different things. Most of the time it is surrounded by kids, what they're doing, because they want kids to be able to connect with the fact that they are helping other kids around the world. And so what we are doing at our church, we are going every kid, beginning in January, we introduce this. Every kid gets one of these. And if you have not written your name on your kids' barrel, please do it.
Yes.
They're all over now. We're having them take these and collect money throughout the month, and then at the last Sunday of the month, they bring it in and they dump it. We take the offering the last Sunday of the month, and we all get to celebrate how much they gave and what God did through that. Last Sunday, we did that, and I don't know how, I assume it was good, or it was fun.
They did a lot in.
So I had texted Sue. So this is literally the first time our church has done this. Some kids have done it with SOC. A lot of kids had never, and they were excited about it. And I had texted Sue last week. I was like, please tell me how much they got so we can celebrate it next Sunday and with the kids. So first time, 4 weeks, our kids raised $71.
Wow.
Yes.
They were so excited when they saw the bucket.
Yes.
And look at it, they're digging in. Look at all the
It
money.
was so exciting. These kids were hyped. And that doesn't count Titan's barrel that he wasn't there. We didn't dump it. We waited in for him.
Full too.
Yes. And he brought that thing back the very next week. It was chock full.
Was so heavy.
Yeah. I was like, bro, that's amazing. So that was super encouraging to me when she texted me and I told her, $71 in 4 weeks. There's 6 kids doing this.
Yes.
That's huge. And Alice every day is like, what chore can I do? How can I get some money? And I was like, okay, let me think. What else can you do that I don't already make you do? So I was but they're excited and they know. So that was super encouraging to me as a leader, because I was like, they're getting it and their parents are getting it and I'm excited and they're excited. So tomorrow it works out perfectly, because tomorrow is Communion Sunday, so all the kids are in service for the beginning. So we're going to celebrate that as adults in service with the kids. It'll be really fun. So they don't know, so don't tell them the amount. They get to find out tomorrow. So anyway, so that's going to be the other thing that we're going to really go for. Okay, lastly, I'm going to touch on, okay, a couple minutes. Really quick, I just want everybody on the same page of what is the curriculum that we use. I'm actually going to wait till Daisy comes back since she doesn't go downstairs. But in the meantime, in a couple weeks, on the second to last Sunday, the last Saturday of the month, whatever, there's a Kids XP you've probably heard about. It's like a youth convention, one-day youth convention for kids. I have never gone. I've heard about it for years. Obviously, it's an Assemblies of God thing. I'm going this year, and I was going to go whether we had kids going or not, just so I know what it is and can experience it. And we have a couple kids signed up. The Meeks kids are coming, and I'm really excited about that. I think it'll be fun to see and to watch the kids, have an experience with God, and to be a part of that. So that's coming up in a couple weeks, and I'm looking forward to see what happens with that. So we're going to take a little crew from St. Joe. It might only be a few kids, but I'm hyped about it. And I think the registration might close this week if you have kids that want to go. I think it's all on there. I want to say.
Yeah, it closes on the 6th.
Yeah, this week. Really quick.
Macy will be fine, but I just need to get her signed.
I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm not even signed up and I'm going, so I need to sign up this week.
And I did go several years ago.
Have you? Okay.
Yeah, I was one of the chaperones, but you really need to have a heart set for kids, because if you don't have the patience, don't go.
It's chaos.
Please
I'm sure it's
don't
chaos.
go.
It's hundreds of kids.
You need to have like
It's 9 to 4. But we would need
the mind, the heart for the kids.
this in Princeton.
If you don't, they're going to drive you nuts. And you will be nuts. I will tell you that. Like then you have.
So yeah, so far it's me and Daniel and Olive. I was like, what is her name? That are going, and then she said Macy said hers, and Macy's going. So that's in a couple weeks. We're excited to take kids. You have to be in like second grade to go. So Atlas is just devastated that he's not old enough yet. Next year, buddy, next year. Anyway, okay, so I'm going to talk through the curriculums that we use in the 2 rooms just so everybody knows. I just want all of us to be one team here, so I want everybody to be on the same page. So we do something called, in each room, in the preschool room, we do it, it's a video where they're actually talking about it. And in the elementary room, it's just words on a screen, but they repeat them. It's something called the declaration. I should have had this pulled up earlier, and I just totally forgot.
I have it right here.
Do you really? Like on video?
Oh, no.
Sorry, that's what I meant. Yes, I
Okay.
wanted to actually show a video,
No.
but show one of the videos. But so basically, what upstairs in the preschool room, I start youngest to oldest here. They do a little video. It's literally less than a minute long. It's like 50 seconds or something like that, where there's a lady on the screen doing like some actions, and she says a few lines, and then the kids repeat it. And it's like, thank you, God, that you made me. And then the kids say, thank you, God, that you made me. And then I am your kid. Did you really? Did they want to keep playing it? That's funny. Usually that's... That's not surprising at all. My girls are like, again, with everything. So it's very, it's called the declaration because we're teaching these kids truth about who they are and who God says they are. And it's very simple, like I said, for the little ones especially. But I will tell you, when I was up there that week, a couple weeks ago, I had not been up there since we started doing this. And I was like, we'll see how this goes, whatever. So I pushed play, and Zuri had pulled up a chair and was sitting in front of the TV to watch, and Phoebe was standing there, and Kristen and Claude's daughter was standing there. And they were ready, and as it started, I was like, it's only been 3 weeks or so that we've been doing this, right? Nope, Zuri and Phoebe, both of them started saying it right away, I am your kid. And I was like,
oh, they know all the actions.
gosh. I was like, oh my gosh. And I'm like sitting there like almost crying again. And my gosh, Freya, their little daughter, was like locked in. She was ready. And Macy, their older daughter, I was like, okay, this is working. Like, this is what God, there's a reason, like whatever. And to talk with them about that, it was just cool. So we do that up there for, like I said, just under a minute, unless you play it on repeat because kids ask you. And then we do at least one worship video. So it's a worship song with actions. It's a fun, upbeat one. And then I just added some slower ones in there recently. And I just always tell the volunteers, if you'd like to do more than one, you can just do one for sure and have the kids engaging. And then we do a Bible story, really quick Bible story. However, the Bible that is up there is way too quick. So I have another one at home that hopefully I'll remember to bring tomorrow. It's a little bit longer. Because the week that I was up there, Macy, Freya's sister, she sat down and she's like, let's do another one, and another one, and another one. And she knew a lot of the Bible stories, and she was like answering some of it. It was very cool. So we wanted to provide a little bit more structure for the preschool and nursery, so that when they get to the elementary, they're more ready for that, but also because the 3 and 4 or 5-year-olds up there are ready for more than just sitting and playing. So that was a cool element that we implemented, and I feel like it has worked so far. I don't know, the 4 of you that are up there regularly, do you feel like that has been beneficial in the week? You guys have all served at least once with it, right?
Yeah, I thought it was help them get engaged.
Yes. Okay. Good. Any negative feedback or anything you're like, this isn't working or this isn't great?
I'd like to see more of it.
Okay.
Those are really
The Bible's
engaged.
the biggest one.
Okay.
Short.
Yes, the longer Bible story.
When I was up there
Okay.
on her last Sunday, I had her Sunday sat on my lap, and she just stared at me.
Mm-hmm. They're again, even the littlest ones are engaged somehow. Like when I was sitting on the floor reading the Bible with them, and we actually have coloring sheets that I'm going to start to bring for them that has to do with the Bible story, that they can color. There is a preschool version of the Bible story that the elementary kids are getting, I've watched a few of the weeks and it's good, but I'm not quite sure if the current kids that we have right now would be able to grasp all of it. It's a little bit wordy. So I'm still stewing on that, and I'll actually have some of you review it too and see what you think if you'd like to. But so that's what we do for elementary or for preschool and nursery right now, which is great. It's going great. Elementary, we last fall adopted all the River of Life locations. We started a new curriculum, and the curriculum is called Wonder Inc., which is where all this is coming from, including the preschool stuff. But it is super good. It actually is like teaching the Bible. It's not just talking about core values, like, oh, this week we're talking about joy, and let's talk about joy. Instead, it's like, this week, this is the Bible story, and this is what we're pulling from the Bible story, and things like that. So it's a lot more feedback the four of us have had anyway. It's much more grounded in the Word, which is obviously what we want. So they go through every week. Let me just pull up my hands on my thing right here. So each week they do unless it's the first Sunday of the month, we have a worship time in there. We have a declaring God's wonder, like what we do in the preschool, but they don't have a video. They just have the words on the screen, and they're repeating them like the teacher says it, and then the kids say it back to them. And then we've implemented BGMC, so there is a video that talks about, each week it's something different, which these are actually really cool. It's a resource that BGMC puts out for everybody for free, but it talks about every week it's something different. Like one week it was talking about the differences in people, and then it brings it back to, even though there's so many people that are different than you, we all need Jesus, and we all can have an impact. And then the next week it'll talk about a different way. It's just different ways for kids to understand missions and understand why should I give, and like how does that impact me? What's the point of me giving to somebody that lives in Russia or something like that? So it's really good about doing that. The third Sunday of every month, when we have a missionary and the adults, Tyler usually says it, but they speak first to the kids. So they go in and they have a presentation that they do with the kids. A lot of times it's interactive. Atlas has told me before what they do, and it's fun and it keeps the kids' attention. Again, if you're a missionary, most churches will tell you you need to be prepared to speak to kids as well as adults. And so they're all prepared for that. So on the third Sunday of the month, they get to hear from a live missionary about BGMC, and then the very next week they bring back the barrel, so it's fun for them to come right off of that. And then they do a Bible story. And the Bible story is on the video. It's a fun video that the curriculum has for them, engaging and stuff. There's different themes for every month. So like this month they're learning about who is Jesus. And so the theme is like this guy's like a CIA agent, and it opens up every week with him talking about it is pretty creative. Yeah, he's like trying to solve this case of who this Jesus is, and it's very, very creative and fun. And so they watch the Bible story, and then up to the teachers if they want to read it in the Bible as well, have the kids help read it. They can do like an activity to experience the Bible story. There's different ways that they can do that. And then there's something every week called the Wonder Truth. And that is essentially what is the big idea from this week. So Wonder Truth could be, I can tell God's message, or my life can teach God's message, or Jesus, the Holy Spirit leads me into truth. Different things like that. There's a simple Wonder Truth takeaway. So when I ask Atlas at the end of church, hey, what was the Wonder Truth today? He knows what I'm talking about. Oh, this is what it was, and this is what it means, kind of a thing. So they do that, and then they, every month there's this scripture, memory verse that every week we go through, and by the end of the month they're able to hopefully have it memorized or mostly memorized. And that's powerful as well, because there was one month that Atlas was playing on the whiteboard at our house, and I came into the room and he had written out that month's Bible verse, and I about died. And I was like, and he was like, is that right? And I was like, he missed one or two words. And I was like, thank you, Jesus, thank you, Jesus. And I was like, oh my gosh, this stuff is sticking. It's sticking with my child. And those are the moments when you have a kid that's in there, you're like, this is why we're doing this. This is so valuable, and we get to see firsthand in our houses that come to fruition. But how powerful! That was very cool to me. And so we do that every week, practice in some fun way, or repetition, and we erase some words, and then they have to keep saying it, or we play a game with it, or whatever. And then sometimes we do small group stuff, and then but other times we don't. So just so everybody is on the same page of kind of the flow of kids' church and everything, if you're never upstairs or you're never downstairs. I just wanted everybody to have an idea of what we do. So we're going to take a break for a couple minutes before we jump into the policies and procedures, which is very, very important. So if you need to go to the bathroom, it's down the stairs, and everybody needs to know it. So couple things. If you did not already know, which you should have, working with children, working with minors, anything in the with minors, you are a mandatory reporter. Which means if someone were to come to you and tell you something, if they're being abused or something is happening, you are required by law to report that. You can literally get a record for not to even get in trouble legally because you are working with children or minors. So as volunteers, not only do you all have background checks, except for Lily because you don't do it unless you're 18, you also all are mandatory reporters. So that means in the event of a child coming up and saying, this is happening to me, this happened to me, or so-and-so said that this is happening to them, we are required by law to report that. Now, I'm going to go through the process of how that looks for you as a leader as leaders versus me as the leader over the whole ministry. But an example, so Atlas last year and this year, actually two different things. Last year in kindergarten at school, this wasn't at church, but he had a situation where one of his friends told him, and you never know with kids like what they're making up or what you're like, that story got so misconstrued and sounded terrible, like whatever, when it really wasn't, but you just never know. So he told me that one of his friends told him that his mom throws him against the wall. And I was like, okay. It's like I didn't want to panic, and I knew this mom, kind of ish. I was getting to know her and the boy. And I was like, okay, what do I do here? So I just told the teacher, I messaged the teacher, I just said, hey, this is what Atlas told me has happened. You never know with kids what can get misconstrued or whatever, but at the same time, it has not set well with me. So I'm just letting you know. And she obviously was grateful that I brought it up, and she was going to follow up with the family, or with whatever their process is. Similar thing happened again this year that another kid told Atlas something that was going on with her family. I asked more questions, and I think what ended up happening was something about, I think the little girl's parents were fighting at home or potentially getting a divorce or something. But I was trying to ask more questions to make sure that she didn't tell Atlas that she was being hurt or hit or something like that, or angry. I don't remember exactly what happened, but anyway. So there's situations like that. If that ever happens at church when you are serving or at an event that you're at with minors, you are a mandatory reporter, which means in the event of that happening, you are able to talk with the child. Like you don't have to be like, stop talking right now, I can't hear that, whatever. Don't do that, please. You will break their trust. But also recognize that, especially if they're old enough to understand, they need to know that your main goal is that they are safe. So your best bet in that situation is to just let them know, say, hey, you can tell me whatever you need to tell me. You can trust me. I also just want you to know that I'm going to have to let Sephra know so that we can make sure that you are safe and things like that. Sometimes it'll scare the kids, sometimes, whatever. But at the same time, bottom line, we want these kids safe. So if something happens, something is said, we need them to know that you're going to have to tell someone else, okay? Someone that is trusted, and you can just tell them that that'll be me. So what does that look like? How does that process work? In the event that this happens, our best bet is to make a phone call to the police and to CPS. Why CPS? And this lady was talking when she was sharing. She was saying, a lot of us have a bad taste in our mouth from CPS because we're about CPS, because we've heard stories about, well, why are these kids left with drug addicts when these kids are taken from great home, all these things. And yeah, I'm sure that happens, but at the same time, she's like, there's a lot that the general population just doesn't understand about the process with CPS and how this has to work and things that are out of their control. Yes, go ahead.
What is CPS?
Sorry, Child Protective Services.
Okay, just one.
Sorry, yes, yep. Child Protective Services is CPS, and they work on behalf of the child to ensure the child's safety and go through the process of investigating claims or reports that happen alongside the police to, if a child needs to be removed, if whatever happens, they do those investigations.
Is that a county?
Say it again?
A county?
Yep. So the counties, every county has a Child Protective Service, CPS, department. Now, for our church, we are in Stearns County. So anything that is, let's say a kid comes to our church from, I don't know, down by the cities, and they tell us something has happened. We have to report it to Stearns County because that's where it was reported. And they will make sure Hennepin County or wherever learns about that. To my knowledge, I will follow up and make sure that that is correct, that we don't report it to whatever. Anyway, what we do is we report the information we've been given. That's what we are doing. And so our, if you do not report something that has been told to you, you could be liable for a misdemeanor. And if something were to happen to that child and they found out that you knew and you didn't say anything, so just say something. It's the law. So what I did was I looked up the Stearns County CPS phone numbers, and I did this, and I was going to share them with you, but now I think I'm going to wait because I just want to double check that it's not the county where the people are from, like that we're supposed to report, like that Hennepin situation, for example. So CPS works with, like I said, they work with the family to, if an investigation needs to be happening, whatever. But what she was teaching us too is that a lot of times if you, let's say somebody says something to you and you're not sure if it's, you're like, I don't, this is kind of, sort of, maybe like abuse. I don't know if it is, and I don't really know. The cool thing about CPS is you can just call them and talk to them. You can just say, hey, somebody told me this, and I don't know if this is like a report that I need to make, if this is, like, can you just let me know? And they'll talk you through what happened, and they will let you know if you need to file an official claim. All of that will be after you already tell me, please. But also, again, just having this resource means that A, you're not liable for a misdemeanor, B, you are going through the proper channels, but most importantly, that we are keeping these kids safe. If somebody says something to you, we don't know. We think we know, we don't. Like, we think we're like, oh, they're come from such a good family. Like, I don't think that actually happened. Unfortunately, a lot of this stuff is coming from people who we think are good families, you know? Like, the stats are outrageous of things that, anyway. So yes.
We would report to you.
Yep.
But we would be the ones to call.
Yep, so what the process is, I need to know so that our leadership team can know. But that, when you file a report with CPS and or the police, it has to come from the person who received the information. So I would not be able to make that claim on behalf of you. You would have to be there to tell them directly what happened and write it all out. Obviously the main reason is just so they can get it without playing telephone. And then, and again, you know, CPS's goal is to restore families as long as it's a healthy situation. But if that's not the case, then their goal is to get the child out and have them be placed in a safe situation. So with things like this, anything from physical abuse, sexual abuse, a threatened injury, mental abuse, neglect, medical neglect. If a child clearly has medical issues and they're not getting the care that it's obvious, things like that, even if they don't say something about it, but it's obvious. Things like, anything like that you're like, this just doesn't seem right. Like, come talk to me, please. Again, you will not be like, oh, don't talk about that, whatever. No, we take this stuff seriously. We want these kids to be safe and well cared for. So any of those types of things. If, like I said, and sometimes, she used the example of, again, like if a kid comes to you and says, hey, Johnny told me that his dad is doing that thing. So it's not the actual child who's being hurt that's telling you. That still come talk to me. Again, we need to get to the bottom of it to make sure that that they are safe. So the first couple steps after something like this happens is the again, coming and telling me obviously as immediately as you can. Do not, with your body language, with your words, with your facial expressions, do not make a huge deal about this to the child or they will shut down. Mm-hmm. The second you say, oh my gosh, are you serious? Or like, oh, okay, any of that stuff, a lot of times children who are being abused or in situations like that, they will be like, I'm not going to talk anymore. This person just got a really big reaction. Like, you know what I mean? So we need to establish that you're a safe person, that they can talk to you about whatever they need to tell you, but also that your number one goal is to make sure that they're safe. So you may have to say, I just am going to let Sephra know too, so that we can, and then we will have the conversation of, let's call the police and have them have a conversation, whatever. We'll do all of that if we need to. we will determine together, whoever it is, let's say Taylor comes and tells me that, she and I and probably Tyler would have a conversation determining if we need to make a phone call to CPS and the police. Secondly, initially, do not tell the parents right away. Why? Because it might be the parents who are doing this. This is a hard, sticky thing. Like, when she was talking about this, I was like, but that's because it was me and I'm not abusing my children. And I was like, well, I would want to know if somebody said that, you know. But then I realized there's a process to this. And if, even though I am not abusing my children, I want to make sure if Atlas ever said something, you know, whatever, I want to make sure that he's being spoken to by professionals who are all of that stuff, so they can get to the bottom of realizing, oh, they're not abusing him. You know what I mean? And if I need to be removed for a little bit of that, that's okay. Like, do what you need to do. I trust the authorities, you know. So recognize that sometimes the family members are the problem. So going straight and telling the parent or texting the parent, hey, I just had this conversation with Johnny and he said this and this and this, could be worse for that child when they leave. So don't let the parents in right away. We will discuss and determine, and if we bring in police or CPS or whoever, we'll talk about it and discuss if the parents need to know, or, you know, severe cases if the child cannot leave the building with their parents, whatever all that stuff is, that's for the authorities to decide once they get involved. So your initial reaction of wanting to tell the parents is not necessarily the right reaction, which was hard for me to hear, but then when she explained it, I understood it. So then, when you're disclosing to, or whenever it comes time, if the family does need to be let, if they need to be let know of the information, again, that will come after the conversation with me and potentially the conversation with the authorities. She had said here, in an ideal situation, we would call CPS with the family when we saw when we saw it and heard about it, but not necessarily, it's not always the ideal situation. And she did say, you know, a lot of times, depending on what it is, the parents, if it's not this type of, if it's not dangerous for the parent situation, then the parents being involved with CPS can help, and be helpful, you know, but at the same time, we have to just decide first if that's the right step to take. Just timeline stuff, immediately, like I said, let's say something happens during kids' church where it's like a small group time and a kid says something, at the appropriate time, without dropping the class and being like, okay, I gotta go, you know, I gotta go tell stuff right now, or whatever, like, at the appropriate time, you know, come and talk with me as soon as possible. There's a 24-hour window to make that phone call to report, and within the county of residence. Okay, this does county of residence, hold on, just want to make sure I'm giving you correct information. And then they will ask you to make a written report as well, just to follow up within 72 hours with a written report. But once you get, so anything that has happened within anything that has happened within the last 3 years, and for sexual offenses, it's within the last 7 years, has to be reported. So if a kid comes to you and says, like, oh, like a year ago this happened to me, do not write it off because it was a year ago. You still are required to report that. And it's within the last 3 years, and then I said with any sexual abuse, it's within the last 7 years. The statute of limitations was 7 years.
And can I just
Yes.
add, I would say, even if it's more than that,
Just report.
still report
Yes.
it, because
Yes.
sometimes those things get blocked out of
Yes.
their minds and their memories.
Exactly. And you never,
Trauma.
yes, the timeline, and who knows if, yeah, that happened a year ago, but since then this stuff has been
Yeah.
continued, you know, so just don't, yeah.
It can show a pattern.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
If the person continuously does it, it shows a pattern that it goes back far beyond.
Exactly, and that's actually the next point. CPS, when you make that phone call, if they determine that it's not something that they can prosecute or pull the child or whatever, severe enough, I guess I'll say, that still is what's called like screened out. They like screen the call and then it's like, okay, determine this is not something that we need to follow up with right now. Screened out reports stay on file for 5 years. So that, let's say that happens and you're like, well, okay, this, you know, talk to CPS, talk to everything. Okay, this isn't, you know, something that is whatever right now. But then 6 months later, they get another call about that same family and something else happened. They still have on file that 6 months ago something else happened. The pattern, you're like, okay, yep, now we go in and we do something, you know.
Did you say 5 years it's on file?
Yes, yep. And I talked to Sue at Sock Center, and she said other than for like the church insurance, because sometimes church insurance is require like a separate report too of things. She said nothing other than the initial police and the CPS report is required by their church. And that across the board, we already set this in stone, or in motion. We're going to get more serious about it as much as possible. We're never to be alone with a minor, ever. So even with things like the nursery, I know it gets sticky sometimes because not everybody's there on time, sometimes with volunteers, and if you're a volunteer, you gotta drop your kids off and get down to your spot in time. We're just gonna start asking parents to it's okay if you get to greeting a little bit late, just stay up there with your kid or keep your kid with you until there's 2 volunteers up there. Just across the board, protects everybody. And it looks better for people who have never come in and there's like, oh, there's just one person up here, it just looks better. So,
Yes.
and it's better protection for all of us. Same thing with what we do in the elementary room. Not ideal, obviously, but it's a little bit of a easier flex because we're right down the hallway from the adults, but it's still not what we want, which is why we every week have a teenager scheduled with them. Ideally, we'd have 2 adults in each room every week, but we're not there yet. So having the teenager who's older than the kids and acts as a secondary leader is helpful for us. So let's see. Just kind of some things on what CPS, what that phone call, if you made that phone call, what that would look like. What are they going to ask me? What do I need to, whatever. They're going to ask you some information about the family, including the names and the addresses of the child and parents, which we would provide. Specific descriptions of the that's a mouthful. Of the suspected abuse and neglect, including what happened, when did it occur, the identity of the abuser, things like that. They're just going to ask you everything you heard from the child. Anything else that's helpful, the child's school, any other witnesses who were there, the child's location, names of other household members. Focus on the facts, not the feelings and the emotions, which is super hard. I was like, this stuff is, it cuts me to the core. Anything involving children being hurt or neglected. But in those moments, again, your goal is to make sure this child is safe. And if your emotions get involved and you're like, I don't know what they said, or I felt like this, and then this was like, it just gets very, instead of like, this is what they told me, this, and this. All of those things. And I'm not expecting you to be emotionless. Like, obviously, if the child tells you something like that, if you're a person, it will probably break you up a little bit. But again, we need to get the correct information to the correct people. So, the CPS has 45 days to finish their investigation. They may be overstaffed, they may be understaffed, depending on the situation. They might be super involved in it, they might be a little bit less involved, again, depending on the situation. Let me see. Sometimes, again, in good situations, or in situations where the parents are not the abusers, CPS, when they know that parents are involved in the process, it obviously helps them improve the outcomes of this. So, and then the screening of situations, like I said, if you're not sure if it's something that you should report, just tell me anyway, and then I'll help you decide. Let's just make a phone call to CPS. It's not going to hurt anything to just ask them, hey, this is what I was told by a child. Is this something I need to make a formal report for? And they will let you know. Excuse me. So those are the things for as far as what that looks like. Reporting. If you have questions, please write them down because we're going to circle back to this in a little bit. Next, I just want to touch on really quick, just basic first aid that I want everybody to know. So, praise God, Mark and Jackie's grandson was saved by a teacher's life when he was choking at school, and a teacher stepped in and did something, did the Heimlich maneuver. We ask most, unless we forget, all of our babysitters, do you know the Heimlich maneuver? Like on little kids. If you don't know that, please Google it. I will put up a YouTube video, or I'll share a link, and we're going to make a YouTube video with all these recordings, and I'll give you the link to it and the people who are gone. But I will get you links, but it's super easy to Google basic Heimlich maneuver for a child. This literally could save a child's life if you know what you're doing. With a baby, flip them upside down, babies and toddlers, and you beat their backs. You do this. as many times as it takes, and it feels harsh. We've had to do this on our kids, and it's so scary. But in the moment, let your reactions jump in and just do it. It will save their lives like it did their grandson. And adults, it's the stomach for us. But I need all of our volunteers to know how to do this. This is a requirement. And I'm not saying you have to go out. At some point, I will figure out a way to get all of us certified and things like that. But bare minimum, Google it so you know what you're doing in the event that something happens. Because somebody in the room needs to step in and do something. And I told told Jackie when she told us the story of her son, I said, thank God the teacher did something. Because in so many emergencies, we've talked to emergency personnel before, and they say, so many times in an emergency situation, everybody freezes. And they automatically think somebody else will do something. And then a lot of times people don't. Nobody does anything because everybody's thinking that. Be the one that does something. Please be the one that does something. I don't even know who this teacher is. I don't know what school, but I keep thinking, I'm like, thank God that teacher did something. Like that she wasn't just standing by and was like, I kind of know what to do, but what if I don't do it right? Try. My gosh, try. Like do it. Do something. So basic CPR or basic first aid as well. Please Google basic CPR on a child. Same thing. Again, hope to God and pray to God this would never have to be used. But in the event John goes down with a heart attack in service, thank God we had an AED. Thank God we had people who knew how to use an AED and people who knew basic CPR, because guess what? The paramedics said he wouldn't have made it if they wouldn't have stepped in. He wouldn't have made it to his car. So we need to know these things when we're working with children. How do you do CPR on children? It's different. It's different than it is on adults. So please Google it, just look at it, know how to do it. Even if you have your own kids or just in general, it's just good knowledge to have to know what you're doing. You're at a restaurant, somebody's choking, nobody knows what to do. Guess what? You step in and do it. They will thank you later, I promise. Even if you break a couple ribs in the process, they will still thank you. Let's see. In every room, in both rooms, there is a first aid kit. It's got Band-Aids, it's got like the basic first aid stuff. Usually in the nursery, I keep it in the bin. Sometimes I pull it out and put it in the table in the elementary room. But it's there if you need it for basic stuff, like I said, Band-Aids, that kind of stuff. Anything more serious, come get me, please. Don't let a kid's arm be half falling off and be like, we'll get to it after service. Not that any of you would.
That's
but
a serious game of Lego.
Seriously, what happened in here? What are you playing? But just know basic CPR, Heimlich maneuver, and know that the first aid kits are in those things. Okay, really quick, we're almost done with this, and then we're going to move into a time of prayer before we close, or Q&A and then prayer. I'm still working on developing some of this, but we have some different ways. This is mostly pertaining to the elementary room, but some like distractions, kids that don't want to be any part of it, and they're going to go back and play with toys when they're supposed to be sitting and doing that. And the preschool and nursery, let them do their thing, obviously. It's very different. But elementary, we want kids engaging. We don't want them distracting other kids, things like that. Well, why do they get to play with that? Why do they get to do that and not do? We've had some of that. I'm still working on different ways to do that. In our culture today, you have to be very careful with how you talk to parents about their kids. And you will slapped with a lawsuit or slapped with like, wow, whatever. But at the same time, again, we want these kids wanting to come to church, and we don't want them feeling like, well, when I was back here, so-and-so came up and was like, get your butt in that seat. Like, you know what I mean? Like, holy cow, you know what I mean? Like, okay, so we don't want that.
But it does feel that way sometimes.
It does, and there are times where I have to be very stern, and I have to remember I will be more gentle than I am sometimes with my own children. But I need you to come sit down. I've asked you 4 times. Come sit down.
See my eyes right now?
Yes, exactly. We are smiling on the outside. Yeah. We are not smiling on the inside. But so recognizing that that happens sometimes, and I'm working on some like different creative ways to help kids like with that, who are consistently distractions or consistently thinking that they can go play and other kids are whatever. So that stuff is in the works, and there's different ways to engage those kids, like to be like, hey, like, why don't you help me take offering today? Or why don't you do this? Give them some ownership. Makes a difference. Huge difference. So that, and then we're also in the works with different things with how to engage kids with special needs. We had, Skylar was in there, but he doesn't really come in there anymore. He is 13, and he has severe autism. He can engage more than he lets on, though. But he stopped coming in there, so that's not, right now we don't currently have anyone with, that would be like a extenuating special needs type of situation. When Phoebe gets into that room, we'll talk about that too at some point, or if we get any other children who have special needs and maybe need different types of attention or learning or whatever we do. But even Phoebe is smarter than people think she is. So it just depends, you know, and a lot of times special needs kids, we like downplay their abilities just because they have a special need, and it drives me nuts. Like I've had to learn a lot having my own kid. I'm like, you are so smart that sometimes you outsmart me. And so we sometimes just need to get out of that mindset. But then there are situations where definitely a child needs different type of help and teaching. So all that said, now we're going to just move into a time of question and answer for a few minutes, and then we will close out this time in prayer. So if you have